The story of Daft Punk begins, not under the glow of global stadium lights, but in the quiet neighborhoods of Paris in the late 1980s and early 1990s. At that time, France's music scene was dominated by local pop and chanson, with only faint echoes of the electronic revolution taking shape in Detroit, Chicago, and Berlin. Yet, for two Parisian teenagers, Thomas Bangalter and Guy-Manuel de Homem-Christo, the future was already audible. The two met in 1987, while attending Lycée Carnot, a high school in the 17th arrondissement of Paris. They quickly discovered a shared passion for music, art, and cinema, particularly the sci-fi and retro-futuristic aesthetics that would one day define their brand. Before becoming Daft Punk, they formed a rock band called Darlin with their friend, Laurent Brankowitz, who would later join the French indie band Phoenix. The name came from a Beach Boys song. Darlin released only a few tracks, and one British music magazine dismissed their work as a daft punky thrash. Instead of taking it as an insult, Bangalter and Homem-Christo adopted Daft Punk as their new name, a branding move that, in hindsight, transformed a throwaway critique into one of the most iconic names in music history. By 1993, the French underground rave scene was thriving. Thomas and Guy-Manuel began experimenting with drum machines, samplers, and synthesizers, drawing inspiration from Chicago house, Detroit techno, funk, and disco. They quickly learned how to sample obscure vinyl records, manipulate loops, and add their own synthesized layers, a hybrid approach that would define their early sound. In September 1993, they attended the Euro Disney Resort, not for the rides, but for the European music conference Euro Disneyland, where they met Stuart McMillan of Slam, who ran the Scottish label Soma Quality Recordings. They gave him a demo tape, and by 1994, their first track, The New Wave, was released, followed by Daft Punk, a song that would become their breakthrough. Daft Punk wasn't just another house track. Built on a gritty bass line, minimal drum loops, and a repetitive yet hypnotic melody, it stood out from the polished club hits of the era. Its rawness felt deliberate. It soon attracted the attention of Virgin Records, who signed Daft Punk in 1996. Though still in their early 20s, their identity as artists was already forming. Anonymity, creative control, and sonic innovation. They had no interest in becoming traditional pop stars, a decision that would shape their career and, decades later, contribute to the mystery surrounding their breakup. Daft Punk's official debut album, Homework, arrived in 1997, and it was unlike anything the mainstream electronic scene had heard before. The title itself was a statement, a nod to their DIY ethos, to making music in their bedrooms, and to the idea that they were doing their homework while studying and reshaping the history of dance music. Homework was both a tribute to their influences and a manifesto for the future of house and techno. The album fused Chicago house grooves, funk bass lines, and acid techno edges, but with a distinctly French twist. Tracks like Around the World, Revolution 909, and Burnin' showcased their ability to turn minimal repetition into hypnotic anthems. They understood something many producers missed. It's not about complexity, it's about the hook that never leaves your head. When Daft Punk was re-released, with its now famous Spike Jonze directed music video, featuring an anthropomorphic dog wandering New York City with a boombox, it solidified Daft Punk's position as a group, with a vision beyond the music. They weren't just producers, they were visual storytellers. The music video for Around the World, directed by Michel Gondry, became a cult classic. In one continuous shot, dancers dressed as mummies, robots, skeletons, and athletes moved in loops, physically representing each element of the track. It was minimal, absurd, and strangely hypnotic, a perfect metaphor for Daft Punk's music. Commercially, Homework sold over 2 million copies worldwide, a huge number for a house album in the late 90s. It didn't just sell records, it helped define the French Touch movement, a wave of French electronic artists who combined disco, house, and sleek production, including acts like Air, Cassius, and Etienne de Crécy. From a production standpoint, Homework was groundbreaking for its use of hardware over software. Bangalter and Homem-Christo relied on the Roland T-909 drum machine, the Akai MPC 3000 sampler, and stacks of vinyl records for sampling. This gave the record a warmth and grit missing from the overly digital club hits of the era. But just as they were stepping into the global spotlight, Daft Punk made one of their most important decisions. They would never show their faces in public again. Before Homework's promotional cycle was over, Daft Punk debuted their now famous robot helmets. This wasn't just a branding gimmick, it was an artistic philosophy. In interviews, they explained, in their cryptic, minimal way, that they wanted the music to come first, not their personal lives. The helmets allowed them to maintain privacy in a way that was almost unheard of in modern pop culture. The robot origin story, told in various forms over the years, was that on September 9, 1999, at 9:09 a.m., an accident in their studio caused their sampler to explode, turning them into robots. Of course, this was just a myth, but like any good myth, it became part of their identity. In reality, the helmets were designed with the help of French artist Paul Hahn and the special effects company, Altman and McCracken in Los Angeles. They were expensive, custom-built, and featured LED displays and elaborate wiring. Over time, the designs evolved, becoming sleeker and more futuristic. The anonymity paid off. While other artists fought for media attention, Daft Punk became more famous the less they were seen. They rarely gave interviews, and when they did, they often answered in short, rehearsed statements or sent a spokesperson. This secrecy not only protected their personal lives, but also gave their music a timeless quality. Their public image didn't age, because their faces were never part of it. By the turn of the millennium, Daft Punk had achieved something rare. They were both underground icons and mainstream stars. The question was, could they do it again? In March 2001, Daft Punk released their second album, Discovery, and everything changed. Where Homework was raw and minimal, Discovery was lush, melodic, and nostalgic. It marked a deliberate shift toward disco, synth-pop, and stadium-friendly hooks, while still grounded in electronic production. The album's lead single, One More Time, became an instant global hit. Its heavily auto-tuned vocals, performed by Romanthony, divided critics at first, but its euphoric melody and infectious groove made it one of the most recognizable dance tracks in history. Other singles like Digital Love, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and Aerodynamic showcased the duo's mastery of sampling obscure sources and reimagining them for a new generation. For example, Digital Love sampled I Love You More by George Duke, layering it with a nostalgic guitar riff and airy synths. Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger used chopped-up vocals as rhythmic instruments, a technique that would later inspire countless producers. The visual side of Discovery was just as ambitious. The entire album was adapted into an anime film, Interstellar 5555, created with legendary Japanese animator Leiji Matsumoto. The film told the story of an alien band kidnapped and brought to Earth, a metaphor for the music industry's exploitation of artists. Each track had its own segment, making Discovery one of the first true audiovisual albums decades. Before Beyoncé's Lemonade, Discovery sold over 3 million copies worldwide and turned Daft Punk into cultural icons. But it also marked a turning point. They were no longer just part of the electronic underground. They were shaping pop culture itself. And with great cultural power came great risk. The next step in their evolution would test their fanbase and redefine their place in the music world. In March 2005, after 4 years of silence, Daft Punk released Human After All, and almost immediately, the reaction was complicated. Where Discovery was colorful, layered, and melodic, Human After All was stripped down to the bone. Just 45 minutes long, it was recorded in only 6 weeks, a rushed timeline by their standards. The sound was raw, repetitive, even abrasive in places. Tracks like Robot Rock, Technologic, and The Prime Time of Your Life leaned heavily on looping riffs with minimal variation. Some critics accused them of being lazy, recycling ideas, and abandoning the lush creativity that made Discovery a classic. Others argued that Human After All was a bold conceptual work, a statement on the machine-like repetition of modern life, and the growing tension between technology and humanity. Ironically, the album's themes felt eerily prophetic. In 2005, MySpace was exploding, YouTube was just launching, and social media was beginning to blur the line between real and artificial identity. Exactly the kind of world Daft Punk seemed to be commenting on. The accompanying visuals were darker, more industrial. Gone were the bright anime colors of Discovery. In their place, stark, metallic backdrops, glitchy imagery, and a more ominous robotic persona. Even the music videos reflected this. Technologic, for example, featured a creepy animatronic doll chanting the lyrics inside a cold, mechanical set. Commercially, Human After All underperformed compared to Discovery, but it wasn't a failure. It still charted worldwide and built a dedicated cult following, especially among fans, who appreciated its raw minimalism. But the real redemption of Human After All wouldn't come from the album itself. It would come from the stage. In April 2006, Daft Punk headlined the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, stepping onto a stage unlike anything the festival, or electronic music, had ever seen. They performed inside a giant pyramid-shaped LED structure, which lit up and transformed in sync with the music. Behind them, a massive screen displayed synchronized visuals, creating a sensory overload that felt like stepping inside the future. This was more than a concert, it was a turning point for live electronic performance. Until then, many electronic acts had a reputation for being static, pressing play on a laptop, while the crowd danced. Daft Punk shattered that image. Their set was a meticulously crafted mashup of their discography, blending tracks from Homework, Discovery, and Human After All into a seamless narrative. For example, they would drop the bass line from Television Rules the Nation over the vocal hook from Crescendoles, or mix Around the World into Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger with precise timing. Every transition felt like a revelation. The 2006 to 2007 Alive tour became legendary. They played across the globe, from Japan to Europe to Australia, and every show became a myth in its own right. Fans filmed shaky cell phone videos and uploaded them to the still young YouTube, helping Daft Punk's live reputation explode far beyond the venues themselves. The resulting live album, Alive 2007, won a Grammy and is still regarded as one of the greatest live electronic recordings of all time. It didn't just rescue the reputation of Human After All, it elevated it, proving that those repetitive riffs were meant to be transformed on stage. By the end of the tour, Daft Punk weren't just stars. They were architects of a new era in live music, inspiring everyone from Deadmau5 to Skrillex to invest in massive stage production and storytelling. But after conquering the live world, Daft Punk once again disappeared from public view. And when they returned, it would be with something no one saw coming, a project that broke every rule of the EDM boom and redefined what a comeback could look like. By 2010, the electronic music landscape had changed beyond recognition. The EDM boom was in full swing. Artists like David Guetta, Swedish House Mafia, and Calvin Harris dominated radio, with high-energy drops and festival anthems. Daft Punk, ironically, were seen as pioneers of the genre, but they had no interest in joining the wave they helped create. Instead, they went in the opposite direction. When they emerged in 2013 with Random Access Memories, it was not the synthetic, club-ready album people expected. It was a lush, analog, live-instrument masterpiece recorded with session musicians, vintage equipment, and a near-obsessive commitment to authenticity. The record was made at legendary studios, like Henson Recording in Los Angeles, using techniques from the 1970s and 1980s. No samples, no laptops. Every sound was played by human hands. They brought in collaborators from across music history: Chic's Nile Rodgers, disco icon Giorgio Moroder, The Strokes' Julian Casablancas, and contemporary talents like Pharrell Williams. Each guest wasn't just featured, they became part of the record's DNA. The lead single, Get Lucky, was an instant cultural phenomenon. Its breezy guitar riffs, smooth bassline, and effortless groove dominated radio worldwide, becoming one of the best-selling digital singles in history. But beyond commercial success, the song became a moment, a unifying track that appealed to clubgoers, parents, and critics alike. The album itself was a love letter to music history. On Giorgio by Moroder, Moroder narrates his life story over an evolving arrangement that shifts from classical strings to pure electronic bliss, essentially compressing 40 years of music into 9 minutes. In Touch, featuring Paul Williams, Daft Punk created a theatrical, emotional epic that defied genre entirely. Critics hailed Random Access Memories as a masterpiece. It won 5 Grammys, including Album of the Year, and solidified Daft Punk as more than just electronic musicians. They were cultural curators, capable of reinventing themselves completely, without losing their essence. But even at the height of their comeback, the duo remained as mysterious as ever. They barely gave interviews, rarely appeared without their helmets, and avoided touring entirely. Many wondered, why? After the Alive tour, surely they could sell out stadiums worldwide. Some speculated they wanted to preserve the perfection of their legacy. Others believe they were simply done with the exhausting cycle of live performance. But nobody could have guessed what was coming next, a silence that would last 8 years, ending not with a new album, but with an ending. After the explosive success of Random Access Memories in 2013, the music world braced itself for another Daft Punk era. But instead of touring or releasing follow-up material, the duo vanished. From 2014 onward, Thomas Bangalter and Guy-Manuel de Homem-Christo retreated into near total silence. Their only major public musical contributions were in 2016, when they collaborated with The Weeknd on Starboy and I Feel It Coming, both of which became massive global hits. The music videos featured the duo in their signature helmets, reinforcing their mythical presence. But these moments were brief flashes in an otherwise dark sky. Rumors swirled in fan communities. Some believe they were secretly working on a concept album. Others thought they were developing an ambitious live show that would redefine the concert experience once again. But as years passed, no such project emerged. In truth, their absence was deliberate. Friends and collaborators later hinted that the duo were deeply protective of their artistic legacy. They feared that chasing trends or releasing weaker material would tarnish their reputation. Their work had always been about precision, about making statements, and if there was nothing left to say, they would rather say nothing at all. Then, on February 22, 2021, Daft Punk broke their silence in the most unorthodox way possible. Without warning, they uploaded a video titled Epilogue to their official YouTube channel. The clip was taken from their 2006 film Electroma. The two robots walk together through a desert until one stops, removes his jacket, and allows the other to activate a self-destruct mechanism. The explosion is slow, almost poetic. The video ends with the years 1993 to 2021 in bold text, accompanied by their track, Touch. It was simple, devastating, and final. There was no press conference, no farewell tour, just a quiet, cinematic goodbye. Fans around the world mourned. Social media flooded with tributes, mashups, and personal stories about how Daft Punk had shaped lives and inspired careers. Even those who weren't fans understood that this was the end of an era. Their breakup wasn't framed as a failure or a falling out. There were no scandals, no public disputes. It felt more like two artists closing a book. They had been writing for nearly 3 decades, a perfect story with a perfect ending. But the question remained, why now? Some speculated that the pandemic accelerated their decision, while others believed the two simply wanted to move on to new creative challenges outside the Daft Punk identity. Whatever the reason, they left behind a body of work that spanned generations and reshaped the cultural perception of electronic music. The robots were gone, but their influence was everywhere. When the dust settled after Daft Punk's farewell, the magnitude of their impact became clearer than ever. From their earliest days in Parisian clubs to their final bow in the digital desert, Thomas Bangalter and Guy-Manuel de Homem-Christo built something rare in the music industry. A legacy untouched by scandal, compromise, or creative stagnation. 1. Redefining the role of the artist. Before Daft Punk, electronic music producers were often faceless, known only to niche audiences. The duo flipped that on its head. By hiding behind robotic helmets, they paradoxically became more iconic than many pop stars who relied on constant exposure. They proved that an artist's identity could be built on mystery, not overexposure. 2. Elevating electronic music to pop culture's main stage. From Homework's gritty house beats to Random Access Memory's lush analog orchestrations, Daft Punk bridged underground and mainstream in a way few acts ever have. They didn't just adapt to trends, they created them, forcing the pop world to follow their lead. 3. Mastery of the event release. Every Daft Punk project felt like an event. Discovery wasn't just an album. It was paired with an animated film, Interstellar 5555. Alive 2007 wasn't just a tour. It was a once-in-a-lifetime audiovisual experience that set new standards for live electronic music. And Random Access Memories wasn't just a record. It was a statement about artistry in an age of disposable music. 4. Cross-generational influence. They inspired the EDM boom of the 2010s without ever being fully part of it. DJs, pop producers, and rock artists alike drew from their sound and philosophy. From Kanye West sampling harder, better, faster, stronger, to The Weeknd reviving the disco sheen of the 1980s with them, Daft Punk's fingerprints are all over modern music. 5. perfect exit strategy. In an industry where many legends fade away through declining relevance, Daft Punk managed something rare. They ended their career at their creative peak, leaving audiences wanting more. By doing so, they preserved the purity of their image. Two artists who never overstayed their welcome. Today, Daft Punk's influence is woven into the fabric of global pop culture. Their music continues to soundtrack commercials, films, and viral moments. Young producers still dissect their tracks to understand how something so simple could sound so monumental. And while the helmets now rest in silence, the myth remains alive. Because Daft Punk was never just about the beats, the samples, or the robot suits. It was about an idea. That music could be timeless. That art could be anonymous yet unforgettable. And that, sometimes, the most human thing of all is to let the robots speak for you. Watch more interesting stories. Subscribe to our channel